Hello, hello. Welcome to the show. Those Ukraine girls really knock me out and leave the West behind. Here today, we have the boys assembled to discuss the HBO miniseries Chernobyl. On the line today, we've got Comrade Eric,
Oi.
Comrade Adam,
Don't call me that. What's up?
Comrade Aaron.
You know what the difference between a Soviet leader and a fascist leader is? The Soviet leader claps with the audience.
And I am your introductory host. I am Comrade J. How we doing, boys?
Doing well.
Doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing all right. How about our Georgia delegation?
It's times are heated, times are tough, but we're making it through. Power to the people.
Glad to hear it. We have assembled today to discuss the HBO miniseries Chernobyl, which takes a look at the, 1984 disaster in the Soviet Union.
It's 84, 86.
Oh, man, I should have got my facts straight. Yes, it is April 1986. Apologies to all of our Soviet listeners.
Back in the USSR.
So, I mean, the general, 10,000 square foot view is that this covers the explosion and meltdown at Chernobyl nuclear facility in the Ukraine, which I didn't realize was in the Ukraine, I guess. Like, whenever before we were watching it, like, I guess maybe I had heard it or knew that before, but I just still thought it was in Russia.
Same here.
So, like, the mindset of how far the Soviet Union's control really reached is crazy.
And how much they've lost since.
Well, the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Well, also, it kind of made sense why Russia went to war with Ukraine back in, what was that, like 2014, 2012?
Well, they annexed a part of the Ukraine. It was
right.
Very, very contentious. Yeah, but so this kind of shows you the story of the people involved with number one, those on the ground when the reactor number 4 exploded, and the bureaucrats and scientists who had to respond to that event, and all the people who were involved in the cleanup and cover up and reveal of that event to the world. So it was only 5 episodes. It was a fairly short little miniseries to tell just this story. But I will say at the end of it, I just had to say, damn, that was well done.
Yeah, very much. Very, very moving.
I appreciated it being 5 episodes. I thought it was very concise, very to the point. I felt like its messaging was also to the point. So I oddly appreciated that it was 5 episodes because, I mean, they covered it well. They revealed the downfalls, made it somewhat, I don't want to say entertaining, but intriguing to follow along with the investigation. I was shocked that it was only 5 episodes. I kept feeling like I never finished it. But
well, to paraphrase, were you not entertained?
I was horrified, because my brain kept coming back to, oh, this happened.
This really
for instance, the first episode just absolutely disgusted me, and it really showed how much harm someone in a position of power can do when they are either embarrassed or left unchecked. In this case, being the doctor. What was his name again? Sorry, it's been a bit.
Dyatlov.
Yeah, Dyatlov. Kept sending people into their deaths. Essentially.
Well, let's define a couple of things. We have at the facility, we have Dyatlov, who is the head he's the head scientist, I guess, in charge of the nuclear program there, and then above him there are these 2 bureaucrats. Was it Fomin and it starts with a B. Byatlov or something like
Boris.
that.
Brukhanov.
One seemed to be a scientist. One was a bureaucrat.
Yeah, but they were scientist / bureaucrat and bureaucrat. So we kind of had a range of characters there. And these guys are I mean, in my opinion, the epitome of bureaucratic bullshit, right?
Yeah.
I guess it's probably cultural also because of how the Soviet Union and just Russia operated, that this was a little bit more business as usual, get it done. But that mindset coupled with the level of danger involved really, really felt wanton. It felt completely reckless.
Right.
And while you're watching it, knowing what's going to happen, knowing what is about to happen, it's almost like your whole body is cringing through, just being like, oh God, oh no, you're sending him deeper. Oh God,
Mhm.
like one mistake after another.
Well, it
Yeah,
can almost show the danger of blind faith. Of I'm sure some of those bureaucrats were like, we wouldn't put it into production if it wasn't safe. So just don't question the decision to use these because our people already ensured that it can't be dangerous. So it's kind of like, in a society where you're not allowed to ask questions,
Mhm.
that's a little bit dangerous, and that's exactly what Chernobyl was about.
Well, I think that the problem here is that Dyatlov, to me, Dyatlov was the true criminal because we saw in the last episode, whenever kind of the decisions are being made, yeah, Fomin had delayed, had not been able to get the test done, and he had certified it had already been done, and so that's corrupt, that's bad behavior. But he asked, should we stop it? They're saying we can't do the test now. They can't lose the power end of the month. Should we just reschedule? And at that point, they should have rescheduled. Even though they hadn't got the test done, they should have rescheduled. And none of this would have happened. So, I mean, to me, Dyatlov was the person who made that decision to push, went to the nuclear reactor with an untrained team, and pushed through the test.
Is that the head engineer that was telling people to nut up or shut up and just push the buttons?
Yeah,
The main
yeah.
guy in the room. Okay,
Yeah, that's Dyatlov. He was the one with the white mustache at the trial at the end.
you're saying that he questioned if they should have.
No, Fomin, the head bureaucrat, the guy with the curly hair, he when they were at the end last episode, he looked at Dyatlov and the guy with the B, I can't ever remember his name, and Boris. And Boris had just been saying to Dyatlov, hey, whenever we get this test done, they'll probably promote Fomin, and I'll take his position, and I'll need someone to take my position. And Dyatlov says, I'd like to be considered. Now, remember, this is cultural aspect of the Soviet Union. When you want someone to do a favor for you, give you a promotion, you do a favor for them, you get the test done. So that helps Boris get his promotion, which gets Dyatlov a promotion. So he has this desire to get the test done.
And wasn't it all like at the end of the year kind of thing? Wasn't this
it was end of the month, so the quotas for production were having to be met.
right?
And that's why they were prepared to do the test, and the factory worker or runners were like, hey, you can't drop any more power. We need that right now. We got to meet these numbers. So instead of canceling the test and rescheduling for another time, they opted to just hold the generator at a lower level, which caused all the buildup. And then whenever they started to lower it even more, it set off a chain reaction, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, one of the themes that I thought was expressed so well in this show was the danger of blind loyalty, whether that be to the party or to what your superiors are telling you. And one of the most powerful scenes I thought was that one where I can never pronounce it, but the female scientist
Kayuk.
She goes to the head of, I think it was Minsk, where she was living at the beginning, and says, we need to evacuate the city. We need to take precautions. I'm an expert, and I'm telling you this is happening. And he's just like, whatever, I go with what the party tells me. And she says, before you were running the show, you were in a shoe factory. And he's just like, so what? I'm a worker just like you. Get out of my office.
Well, and also the workers took over. It's the whole Communist Party type thing. So, but
right, and that's an example of how that's a downside of it, where sometimes you have people running the show who are not equipped to be leaders.
Socrates would be so happy. But No, and it's a great point. I also think even to take that point further, the instruments. We're only reporting 3.6 Roentgens. Well, that's because that's the max that the Roentgens go on that reader. And that gets passed around as the official story, which sets the tone. Which at the end, Sherbina was like, when they sent me out here, they told me it wasn't a big deal, and I believed them. And he was like, why? Because they sent you out here? He's like, yeah, because they sent me to deal with it. That means it had to be not a big deal. So
yeah, and one of the other really powerful scenes for me was the scene with when they get the police robot from Germany and they're saying, yeah, this is going to be able to take the radiation, and then it just completely disintegrates.
Yeah.
And Sharbina has that moment where he spikes the telephone and says they gave them the propaganda number. We couldn't even give the real number when we were asking for help.
No, it's yeah, that was rough. And then coming to realize you have to use human machines. That evaluation, that's the situation you're stuck with, is you just have to incur more human capital damage.
Mm-hmm.
So that there is no shame to the party or to the country.
Yeah, I think that the phrase that Legasov uses is biological robots. And what he means by that is men, because in that, I think the high point of the series for me was that scene where they have to clear the roof.
Yeah.
And they show you what that was like for an individual to go do that, where you only had 90 seconds in and out, because any more would kill you.
90s,
well, not that didn't kill him eventually.
The one with the boot, yeah, he probably didn't make it. But I will say this. Let me ask this question. So I watched this with Christy, and there were scenes that she struggled to watch. And I didn't struggle necessarily with the same things she did, but there were scenes that I struggled to watch. Was there any scene that anyone else, like when they were watching, they had to turn away from?
Yes.
While watching
all of them, because it was all unrealistic. No one died the same day. No one died the same day of Chernobyl. Zero deaths were on. Zero deaths were reported the first day
by the corrupt government.
But did the show depict deaths on the first day?
Yes. People were dying of instantaneous radiation poisoning, which is not a thing.
They weren't.
They were taken to the hospital.
Yes,
there were deaths on the first day from the reactor exploding.
There was only one death on the first day, the guy underneath it.
Well, people were walking and opening up the door as if a wind of radiation was like superheating like their blood.
The people who on the bridge died later. They didn't die on the thing. The firefighters, even that were right there in the mix, were later dying in Moscow. I don't know what you're talking about, though. Like, who died on the first day? There's no depiction other than maybe the guy underneath it that was never found.
Okay. I don't remember anyone specifically dying, but all of the gruesome.
You're talking about the faces turning red?
The guy that had the bleeding leg, that's not realistic.
From the guy
that
when he gets shut in the door and he was holding it open?
Yeah. His leg just started spontaneously bleeding. And then the guy that was in the hospital bed who looked like a fifth degree burn victim.
Right.
That's not radiation poisoning. That's not how it develops.
Did you look into how that guy died and if that was an accurate depiction of how he died? And are you maybe misunderstanding the difference between radiation poisoning and radiation burns?
In the show,
that was the guy, just for reference, that went to the roof and was forced to look down into the reactor and later ended up in the hospital. The guy who was in the hospital and she did the interview with and ended up with all the burns. Just for clarification.
Fair. I mean, if they're trying to depict a harsher dramatization of what the guy went through, they successfully did it. But if they're trying to depict a realistic way that people encountered radiation poisoning, such as grabbing a boot and then their hand feeling like it's on fire.
That wasn't a boot, that was graphite from the core.
Yeah.
The
which
other guy,
would definitely cause some burns.
well, I mean, especially if the graphite itself is 1,000 degrees.
Well, no, not even.
It's not about heat.
not.
It's about radiation. The radiation itself can burn the flesh.
Literally,
It's
graphite
a
is the
different
closest
kind
thing.
of burning.
I just had a
Yeah.
hard time watching the drama meet what I've come to understand, and did at least a little bit of research on how many deaths and casualties there were on the first day. And Vanity Fair did a good one with a nurse from Chernobyl, just saying like most of these things were not the way that they came down. Like the pregnant lady who caught radiation from her husband. They're saying like radiation isn't even contagious like that.
Let
So
me
then
ask
her
a question real
If
quick.
he's irradiated, yes, it is. It's not contagious, Eric. When you absorb too much radiation, you start emitting it yourself.
Mhm.
It's like the clothes down in the basement. That's still irradiated. The radiation that was being let off during the reaction was so powerful
But-
that it permeated the
but he
very
wa-
fabrics.
Yeah, he wasn't wearing his clothes anymore, and they bathed him several times.
But it's not on his skin. It's in his cells. That's the difference. Is that you're thinking this is like a chemical. That's not what this is. This is particles.
I don't. I'm not thinking one thing or another. I'm thinking that the show dramatized reality, and I mean, according to at least one resource, watching Vanity Fair and just her depiction of her experience at Chernobyl was not parallel to what the show did.
Let me
So
ask a question real quick.
all I'm saying is if they're going for accuracy, I think it does it a disservice to like do shock and awe in the timeline that they did. But I understand like explosions are gruesome and everything else. Like people are going to die in explosions, fire and heat and unknown amounts of radiation is unprecedented. I'm just saying I don't like how they depicted it as gruesomely as they did.
So the numbers that were reported for the people who died, those were released by the Ukrainian government, right? Who died on the first day? Sorry, is that right? I'm
I don't
asking because
know.
I don't know. Is there any way those could be propaganda numbers, the same way the 3.6 was?
I mean the 31.
Oh no, the reading that read 3.6 was propaganda because it was way higher than that, like in the 10,000s.
Well, that's just the
was.
sheer impact of the radiation over all the people that were exposed.
Well, people dying from an explosion and fire and tragedy, that's expected. Just all I'm saying is the way that they depicted people walking through halls, breathing in radiation, and then instantly turning into mutant Ninja Turtles is just not the way I've read reality to affect the human body with
yes,
radiation like that.
This show did take liberties. For example, the female scientist, that's not a real person. She's a, as they explained at the end, she was a combination of many different people who contributed. So, I guess if your point is it's a TV show, then yeah, you're right. It's a TV show.
So coming back to the earlier question, did anybody else have any problems with things in the show? Something that was hard to watch?
For me, seeing the victims of the radiation and just how, how their skin turned white and blistered and especially that scene with the pregnant wife and the firefighter husband, Ignatenko, in the hospital where he's asking her to describe the scene out the window, and she's just, it's a very dour landscape, but she's saying, "Oh, I can see Red Square." That was, seeing him in that position was so very tough.
Yeah. Especially finding out later, they didn't show anything, but finding out later that the woman's baby did not make it. That was hard. You know those moments and when you watch movies and TV, it's like you just want to reach out into the screen and say, "Stop! Go the other way." But you can't. And I felt like that was what that story was supposed to emulate, was like that feeling of you want to warn this person, but it's already too late.
Well, she did a good job in like loving her husband through the whole thing. I mean,
yeah, was still a mistake though, because let's face it, that's probably why her baby died.
Well, definitely. I mean, I bet she, looking in hindsight, she knows that her husband would have wanted her to make a different decision. But it's your last chance to say goodbye to your husband or whatever else. Like, I mean,
could have came in with a suit, different
probably,
clothes, taking precautions. Also, the nurses did a terrible job in that scenario. What the hell? But hey, they didn't really understand what was going on either. Nothing like this had ever happened. So,
people also smoke cigarettes knowing it's going to shorten their lifespan too.
Yeah, this is
well, they also smoke cigarettes on the airplanes and next to the pregnant women, but
I love that throughout the series, how they're all concerned about cancer from the radiation while they're chain smoking. That was a lovely bit of like retroactive irony.
Moment that I didn't expect was Dix. Just did not see that coming.
Oh, all the
like,
naked
it's
miners?
on screen.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was kind of funny, though.
The only scene I couldn't watch was the shooting of the dogs. I can't handle violence against dogs.
That was.
I mean, it was
tough.
rough.
That was very, very tough.
I know it was absolutely necessary, and I agree it's the right move, but I just didn't want to watch it.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, none of the other stuff really bothered me that much, just because I've seen a lot of like the what's it called, the makeup body horror movies, like The Thing and stuff like that.
Well, you mentioned that there were different scenes that bothered Christy. What sort of aspects?
Like watching the interview with the people that had no skin left. You know,
Yeah.
she would cringe and look away. That didn't bother me as much because, again, body horror makeup stuff is really fascinating to me. But the shooting of the dogs, even just the build up to it, made me uncomfortable. Like, you know, there was this tension. Oh, we're the animal patrol. We're going to go shoot all the animals, go door to door. And then the build up to killing the pups. Like, it was a very uncomfortable, like, I understand that it was necessary, but it was just a very uncomfortable sequence for me. But, man, that trial, that was powerful. Even though, you know, it was definitely going to be pre-recorded and released. I don't know why they didn't realize that it wasn't going to be live, you know, like, yeah, it's being recorded, but they're going to edit. The Soviet Union's not going to just let you say whatever you want to say to the whole world on their TV.
I thought one of the ways this show really succeeded was that it did not explain what exactly happened until almost the very end, where through the first 4 episodes, you're, you know, unless you've done extensive research on this, you're as in the dark as the characters as to why did this happen. And I felt like that was something that was really affecting for me.
Yeah, I as someone who did not look up how Chernobyl happened or why it happened, and I think that's definitely the way to go into this show, because it does a pretty good job, even if it does take some liberties, of explaining everything and why it occurred, why it should never happen again if necessary precautions are taken and certain standards are followed, and it lays it all out for you. And it definitely just does a very good job of explaining the whole situation.
Yeah, I'll admit that when I first started watching the show, I started to look into the Wikipedia article and tried to read about the causes for it, and I just don't have the scientific base of knowledge to understand what it was saying. So when we finally got to that final trial scene at the end, I found it, like, I thought that the way that they explained it,
compelling,
very good.
Like,
no,
it worked really well.
Good.
It made it make sense to a layman.
Completely.
The best part was why do we do this? It's cheaper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
Also-
that had to be a collective cringe in the communist community.
Oh yeah. I also thought that it was a really good decision and really compelling, really smart that we begin the series with the explosion and we don't see the run up to it until the last episode.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And just how stunned everybody was.
Right.
Like that was so impactful. The fact that they're like, how does one of these reactors explode? That's just not possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it was just the conventional wisdom, the conventional science that it couldn't happen. So therefore that couldn't be what happened. So we're not going to even entertain the thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that whole first episode was so powerful, like for that, because they don't even know exactly what happened, so they're trying to solve a problem. They don't even know what the problem is. So it was very affecting to be in that with them, in that the confusion.
I'd like to point out, I think they did a good job with the music choreography in the show. Specifically when they showed moments of the reactor, they had those deep Inception-like tones that just rumbled, and I thought that was perfect for those moments. Because it really set the mood. It's like, oh shit. This is terrifying. So
the score definitely supplemented everything in the show perfectly. Like it brought it together.
Score is definitely a better word than choreography.
The musical choreography.
Can we also take a moment and talk about the performances of the actors? Because I felt like top to bottom, just absolutely fantastic performances.
By everybody. I will say that any time that the pregnant lady just touched her husband, I did cringe. Because I was just like, he has no skin in this situation. I feel like you're wanting to be comforting, but it feels like that seems to be the opposite of what you're doing. I don't know.
Have you ever touched someone with sunburn? Not fun.
Yeah, that's kind of my point is, to me, that whole sequence felt more about her than him. And she portrayed it as, I don't want him to be alone when he dies. It felt, she didn't sit behind the curtain. She didn't follow the rules. To me, I saw that as her selfishness, not her kindness, if that makes any sense.
It does, completely.
A complete disregard for the experts in the room telling her, don't go behind the curtain. He's got open wounds. His immune system is flatlined from the radiation. You're a walking bottle of bacteria. You're just going to make his horrible existence even worse going forward. To me, that whole sequence made me angry.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of Jared Harris, who played Legasov,
so
sort of lead. Pretty much everything he's ever been in, he has been fantastic. And I don't mean to run down his performance at all, but the ones that stole the show for me were Stellan Skarsgård as Sharbina. He was absolutely fantastic.
He was.
Emily Watson as Komuk, fantastic. But the biggest one for me was Paul Ritter as Dyatlov. Just the menace and the arrogance that he brought to the character, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in another show that I really like that I think we've considered watching but never did, called Friday Night Dinner, which is actually it's a British sitcom.
Is it the one with the guy from In-Betweeners?
Yes, and his brother is one of the guys from Plebs.
Okay,
fantastic show.
I'd be down to watch that too.
The actor who played Dyatlov, Paul Ritter, he plays the dad, and his character could not be more different from Dyatlov.
Really?
So, this guy's got range, and I would love to see him to get plenty of other, especially dramatic roles, because I feel like in this show he absolutely nailed it.
He did.
And for Stellan Skarsgård as well, he had several different really powerful moments, but maybe the best for me was that scene where he's recruiting the men to go down recruiting the divers to go release the water from those tanks in the I think it's either I think it's in the second episode.
Yeah.
And he's basically sending them to their deaths, or that's the understanding at the time. And he says, "You're going to do it because it needs to be done." And just the punch that he gave to that really just hit me like, oh wow. Like if I was sitting in that room, I might stand up and say, "Yeah, I'll go to my death." Like
there's something bigger than you that demands that this happen, and none of us. I feel like it's kind of like how he said at the end. He's like, you kind of accept intellectually, oh, this is going to happen to me, but then whenever it starts to happen, you realize that you had kind of tricked yourself in thinking it won't happen to me, and it is, and you kind of come to terms with it. Like I feel like at that point he's still intellectually, we're all going to die from this. It has to be done. Someone has to stand up. I can't do it. He can't do it. You guys are the only ones equipped to. So it's happening.
I really
a really good call to
enjoy
action.
Stellan Skarsgård's character growth and development. Because in the first episode, he comes off as this bureaucrat who doesn't really care. And he's just like, whatever. I'll take some of my time to get this done. And you see that in the helicopter ride over. He's like, explain to me everything I need to know. It's like at the end of that conversation, he's like, now I don't need you anymore. And by episode 4, it's almost like they're best friends. And you really see his turnaround and his realization that
it's the trench effect. Yeah. When you're in the trenches with someone, there's a bonding aspect to it, and through that, bond. I think Legazov kind of summarizes at the end. Boris, you became the most important person. We were coming up with the ideas, but you made it happen. Mm-hmm. You got the party to absolutely step up when it needed to. Now, except for the German robot.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like he asked for sand and he said, "I can give you like an entire like as much sand as you need," or something like that?
No, he says we need liquid nitrogen, all the liquid nitrogen in the Soviet Union, and he's like, done. It's like done. We're saying all of it. He's like, it's done. What do you? Why do you keep talking about it?
And I think watching this show in spring of 2020 was especially affecting because there's a theme of people ignoring the advice of experts. Yeah. And in the situation that we're in right now, we need to be listening to the people who have the expertise the most. And if we don't, then it's going to be dangerous for everybody. And that's exactly what happened here.
Mm-hmm. Spot on. I definitely was like, from episode 1 and 2, oh my God.
Yeah,
it's just like with parallels. COVID. It's crazy. And just the arrogance from not only the bureaucrats, but the scientists that were initially involved. Coming back to Dyatlov. Just crazy. Absolutely crazy. I still think one of the hardest hitting moments in the show was when Legasov and Boris, Legasov let it slip that, yeah, we're gonna die. We got 5 years left, and just Boris having to come to terms with that. It definitely affected the character development as well, because after that point he was like, I respect you a lot more that you came here knowing that. So yeah, it was a big moment for me in the show, at least.
Well, are we ready to do some scoring?
Let's get some scores in. Let us start today with Mr. Eric.
Ooh. I think for the most part, I really enjoyed it from a pure technical standpoint, and I'm willing to accept that there's the lack of a masters of nuclear radiation here and present, but the show in general, I'm going to give this a 7 in the sense of drama, brevity, and I think it needed to be done. I hope that any kind of like political liberties were kept under tight wraps. I am not sure exactly all the propaganda numbers and what could have been said and what's still classified as far as national security or whatever else. But as far as the show as a whole, I liked it a lot. I think it needed to happen. I think covering the downfall of lying and overall government corruption and saving a penny for the sake of all that, I think it was a good story that needed to be told. So I'm going to give it a 7.
All right, next up we got Adam.
Along the lines of what Eric said, I think the show needed to be made. I think it was somewhat mixed between a documentary as well as a drama series. And yes, they definitely took some dramatizations, but you're making a television show that's got to sell. So I understand that. I think they got the facts close enough that it's all right that they took those. I was really impressed with the character development as well as, I don't know, just learning about the situation. Because like I said before, I never really looked into Chernobyl or how it happened, what caused it. And, finding out that it was essentially caused by greed and cutting corners was kind of disappointing. Like
There was also
disappointing in humanity, but
design flaw.
yeah, but that was because they cut the corners.
Yeah.
And, wanted to make it cheaper. So, I by the end of it, I was like, yeah, wow, that hit hard. So I think I'm going to go ahead and give this a 9, actually.
9 from Adam. All right, Mr. Aaron Robinson.
So my first thoughts on this are, I agree with Eric. There was the kind of the dramatization of the impact of the radiation. Doing a little research, the Bridge of Death. There's no specific evidence for that Bridge of Death sequence, but at the same time, it's 2020 and Chernobyl is still dangerously irradiated. And so the impact of radiation is very, very powerful and very, very dangerous. To me, what I walked away from this show wondering is what happened at Fukushima. Like now I want to have a better understanding of Fukushima and the radiation zone. I know it's not an explosion. I know it's not a meltdown. I don't think it was a full-on meltdown. But I just don't know. Now, having a bit of understanding about what happened in Chernobyl, it just has piqued my curiosity. So that's a very powerful aspect of art when it can trigger you to want to look into your own world a little bit more. I think it maybe has done its job. So the acting was amazing. The cinematography was amazing. The explanation of the explosion and the visual demonstration of it or recreation of it was absolutely impressive. I'm going to also give it a 9 because I thought that HBO for quality knocked it out of the park. In the same sense that, people's heads don't explode when you shoot them with a sniper rifle and stuff like that. I kind of see. Well, but
I can give it that. I can give it that. I mean, bullets don't always blow limbs off.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I see it. It's like there's a lot of movies where the action sequences are outrageous, but there may be something about it that I enjoy. So kind of that's how I see it, is that they embellish the damage a bit, and it was for gory success. But I think that the overarching story and the danger that radiation does carry was portrayed very well.
Any technical limitation in the medical representation, only in the sense of a timeline, I would easily say is well forgiven with the accuracy of the reactor engineering itself. It
Yeah.
went very in depth to like why graphite on the rods was a problem.
Oh yeah, and that I think it gets back to what do you spend your time on if you only have 5 episodes? You know,
That's
do you,
fair.
and
I'll yield to that. In that
but
regard.
but I also understand that whenever I watch a show where they're doing American law and they're just blowing through how actual courtrooms and legal proceedings operate, it makes me cringe too. So I can appreciate when someone is doing something unscientific, like, well, just press the transporter button. You know, it's kind of like, well, let me enter into disbelief so I can just enjoy this
Right.
type thing. So, but I'm going to give it a 9 because I think that they went for making impact, and I think that they succeeded.
All right, we got a 9 from Aaron. For me, this show it just ticked all of my boxes because to start off with, I love history and I love any kind of show that examines a historical event. I also have a particular fascination with both the Soviet Union and the Soviet Union in the 80s as it was starting to break up. So just getting a glimpse into Soviet life at that point fascinated me to begin with. And then as a drama, I think it succeeds on all levels. It kept me on the edge of my seat, start to finish, every single episode. As we discussed, the performances top notch, the cinematography and the visuals absolutely top notch. The themes of it, the first time that I watched this, I actually watched it last year when it came out, and it was actually at a time in my life when I was reckoning with some lies that I had told in my own life, and it hit me very hard. And then watching it again a year later, I was still on the edge of my seat, start to finish, every single episode. So for me, this is a 10 out of 10 only because I can't give it an 11.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
So we've got a 9, a 7, a 10, and a 9 for an average score of 8.75, which, if I am not mistaken, will put it in the second spot on our leaderboard, just behind The Righteous Gemstones.
Oh, very nice.
Oh,
HBO holding the top spot. Oh, top 2 spots. What's number 3?
Let's see.
Russian Doll.
I apologize,
Probably
I don't
Russian
have this
Doll.
list sorted, but it looks
Oh.
like number 3 is going to be Atlanta season 1.
Fair enough.
Russian Doll's got to be up there, though.
It is. It's got to be like 4 or 5.
Oh, you know what? I spoke too soon. Russian Doll is actually in the is in the third spot at an 8.6, right behind this 8.75. Atlanta's an 8.125.
There we
So-
go.
So we've got Righteous Gemstones, Chernobyl, and Russian
Russian
Doll taking the podium. But also at the other end of the spectrum, the worst show we ever reviewed was another HBO show, which was His Dark Materials.
Yeah. Is Buffy after that?
Yeah, Buffy's second.
His
to last.
Dark Materials was one of the worst rated shows we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just
Oh,
can't
yeah,
get
we
that
hated it. We
series
didn't
right.
like it.
They just can't get it right.
They just can't get it right. I agree with Adam.
They tried
Well,
with the
officially
movie.
at
They
this-
tried with the show now.
At this point, we would have quite an argument about what to watch next, but we've actually already settled that. We all nominated some different shows, rolled the dice, and ended up with the Amazon effort in Upload.
What if I still want to have the argument?
You can go right ahead, Adam.
What are we watching?
Upload.
As opposed to download?
Upload is an Amazon Prime show about digital afterlife.
I don't know how I feel about this one yet.
I'm down.
So we will see. We will see what happens.
I'm already triggered at its inability to be technically accurate.
Oh man, just you wait.
Yeah. I will say this on a parting note, especially since all of us are from Texas. I definitely Juneteenth was this weekend, and as part of Juneteenth celebrations, me and Christy watched 13th. It's a Netflix documentary. I would highly recommend watching it. It is very interesting, and it explores a part of our Constitution, the 13th Amendment, and specifically the exception to slavery under the criminal clause. So it was a very, very powerful movie, documentary, and it was very, very well done. So it's Netflix quality. So worth taking a gander at. So if you are looking for something worth looking into, I would definitely suggest that. It's emotional too, though.
Okay.
So just kind of throwing that out there before we go.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for our discussion of Chernobyl. Check back hopefully next month, for our discussion on Upload.
If you're listening to this on Mars, thanks for tuning in.